Hello, everyone. Welcome back to the RationalInvestor.com's Daily Brief Recap. I'll try and do this a little bit quicker here this morning. Actually, Monday mornings we have our CTO, Sjord, does his presentation. Through the week, we have different presenters through the Daily Brief. So actually, he gave us a really great interview that was done with a gentleman that actually had the early stages of cryptocurrencies actually in the works back in the 1980s. I remember back in the early 90s, there was sort of the early versions of these digital currencies. I remember there was an idea in Canada that was floated around for a while, and it never took off because it just wasn't decentralized. But really interesting interview that Sjord shared with the community from this gentleman. Let's see if I can find that link for you, because it's actually not a bad interview. I actually probably after this video roundup summary, if I ever get to it, of course. I think I'm probably going to just go and sit and listen to this guy. So it's a really cool interview. But, of course, I can't find it. I'll post it in the comments link if I find the link later on here for you. But anyway, happy Monday morning. As you can see, it's a bit later on. Like I said, we had a very long session. And Kevin's already telling me I'm already going over time now. Wonderful. But we had a really great presentation by Sjord, and then of course I did sort of a full sort of overview of what I saw happening in the markets. We're coming into the end of November. Most of this week is actually going to be dominated by the Americans and the U.S. Thanksgiving holiday. So I don't really expect to see any major catastrophe happen through here. And if anything, we even talked about it on the site. We're heading into what is it called these days? Spend your money frivolously Fridays, or no, Black Fridays. That's what it's called. Sorry. And Cyber Mondays. And I've noticed that actually it's now it's a whole week long, right? And sites like TradingView are giving us countdown clocks. You've got 4 days left, 3 days left, 2 days left, all that kind of stuff. So I don't really envision, in the consumer, generally speaking, the data coming out lately has been pretty positive. So I don't really see any breaks in the market here. And what's really fascinating, we reviewed this in the level one or in the daily brief today, was how we went into sort of a bull cycle in the stock market there through the end of October, even after rallying up smartly. And now that we're into the bull cycle, the market is just going crazy up here. So I actually fully believe it or not, that we're actually going to rally into December 24th and actually probably put a pivot top in exactly 1 year from last year's pivot bottom. Let's see how close that prediction is. Okay, so chart deck wise, we're seeing kind of malaise out of the British pound. Nothing really dramatic happening there. I talked about a short trade setup last week there. Euro's just getting smacked. We also talked about Euro short ideas there last week as well. And actually that Euro trade also set up off of an algo signal, which was really cool. Of course, I can never find these when I want to show you them. Somewhere in all this mess, but maybe over here. Wow, somebody's sending me a ton of messages here. There's the British pound trade, just sort of sitting there twiddling its thumb. And here's that Euro trade, just almost hit its move stop to scratch level now. But also, when we talk about risk on, risk off, Japanese yen's looking very weak. So not a big surprise, the US dollar is pressing up against the top end of its range here. Risk on, risk off. As I said, stock market just doesn't seem to want to stop here. I am seeing sort of early signs of things like divergence starting to come into indicator. Where the heck's that screen? We've got stock market moved to new highs, but RSI did not. You can see the very noticeable divergence in MACD forming. And also maybe even the smatterings of OBV divergence. But, obviously market at new all-time high. That's not a sell signal unto itself. And actually, one thing that really surprised me this morning, but you know, it's a trader's life. It happened. It happens. But the Russell 2000, we were watching a short setup here through late last week, and the market just launched higher and busted through the top. So, you know, basically, big talked with the level threeers today. We'll obviously do more review through our group session on Wednesday. How we handled this breaking of this top through the options market. But nonetheless, now that the Russell 2000 seems to have accepted back into this channel, which, you know, all the bulls go, phew, broken to new highs. I don't see resistance on this thing until the midpoint of the channel up top here. What's really interesting about the Russell 2000 is we're nowhere near those old highs, right? There's the old highs on the Russell 2000. So, you know, if the stock market is as happy as it is, we could actually have like a nice, you know, like I said, that December 24th kind of rally event. I think actually you can make the argument that this is just going to be an AB equals CD, and we're just going to go into massive orgy mode here long in the stock market. That's what everything's saying to me here now, although, you know, ridiculously overbought and very difficult to chase. You know, I've got a bunch of stock on the books, and I've got sort of my high flyer list, wherever the hell it is. And you can see crazy pharma stocks just keep powering to new highs. Teva made a new high here this morning, but looking a little exhausted. The one I think might pop hard here is the Sonos. It just broke to new highs here. And I do like this, you know, with the Russell 2000 breaking to new highs. Interesting, paper stocks are up against the top end of their ranges. Kevin had even mentioned just a few minutes before we got the daily brief going that things like consumer discretionary names are getting a lot of attention right now. Of course, with Christmas, you know, on the chart deck that I put together for you, I actually was talking about asking your kids what do they want for Christmas. And I think I even did this in the free YouTube videos too. And I kept hearing everybody saying, Beyblades, Beyblades, Beyblades! What the hell's a goddamn Beyblade? Well, it turns out that Beyblades is a product of Hasbro. And what's really interesting about this chart is Hasbro actually put in a double bottom there Thursday and Friday, and I didn't do anything. Brian! Ugh. Anyway, gaps violently higher here this morning. If I can get any sort of pullback back against these bottoms, I might actually seriously take a look at this thing. And look at this gap. Holy free holies. So, you know, this is just a good anecdote. This is what we used to do in the stock market when we come into Christmas is just ask your kids, what do you want for Christmas? And then let's go look at the toy stocks and see if they're trying to put in bottoms. And sure enough, you know who just popped here. Beyblades, Beyblades! Anyway, so stock market seems to be working higher. And a lot of the recent leaders, especially the pharmaceuticals, they're continuing to lead. So, you know, I don't have any sell signals here in the stock market. You know, it's interesting. Crude's kind of just sort of going sideways here this morning, but, you know, continuing that uppy. Bonds, they're kind of floundering here. Like we said, we like to look at risk on, risk off this morning. You can see the bonds are actually bucking the other risk off trades. Yen actually is M'd out here. Remember I said US dollar's looking uppy. And now if the yen's looking downy, econs coming out of the US are okay, so we're not falling off a cliff. Don't need to go run into the yen for safety. That M there in the yen, that may help the US dollar index quite a bit, but also too, you know, stocks pressing to new highs, oil still relatively strong. Not a big surprise to see that people aren't fleeing into the yen for safety, and the yen's gone and M'd out here. Interesting, too, how the gold, and we sort of talked about this recently, both the gold and the yen backed up against these key downtrend lines. And I even said this on Friday's video. Watch Sunday open on the yen, and if we lose these lows, that's a fractal failure. And this is actually what we call a Joby gap, or a doji gap, where you doji and then gap lower than X bar. If we finish here, and we go through that low tomorrow, that's a monster sell signal, but hopefully everybody looks and sees this very well-defined M right off this trendline rejection. And gee whiz, we also see the same thing in the gold. Big old fractal top. I used to call these a hangman doji, but that's not correct. Or gravestone doji, I think it is. Might be a gravestone doji. I'm not positive. But fractal top, this candle here, if we lose those lows, that's a sell signal. So the gold's back in the pooper. And if we look at the big gold, I like to watch the biggest gold stock around, American Barrick. We sort of talked about this recently. I kind of thought it was choppy. We did rally a little bit further than was expected, but here we are back against this key trend line. Internals don't really look too disturbing. If anything, what I'd like to see is some more choppy, and then a nice breakout through the top here to tell us that this thing is back being a bull. We haven't M'd out here yet, so that's good. You can see how this did develop an empire top here. So it shouldn't surprise us that there's a bit of weakness. If we look at the big gold stocks themselves, actually they left a bit of a gap. And actually you can see that on Barrick as well, just below where we are now. So I'm kind of thinking a little bit more pullback. Remember, I picked up a little bit of that Alio just on the weekly reversal, but I even said that I kind of thought that it was sort of stuck in a range. Let's see, where can I get you a chart to show you this? Was it this one? Yeah. So that ALO is basically just parked in its range for the time being. If we dump through these lows, I'm gone. But I think I told you last week I was interested in this 80-81 level. So I did pick a little bit of it up. But nothing really to get too excited. We'll know that this is a bull if the W comes in. And that's the same thing as the Barrick, right? If that... where the heck did it go? Was it over here? Yeah. If that W does come in, then we know that the gold is a bull. Right now, we're just sort of probing against lows here. So, point of the matter here is risk off. Not looking overly exciting. We just got rejected off of a key trend line. So, big hurry up into nothing. And if the stock market continues to press to new highs, you saw the M and the yen, so things are looking a little suspect out of the sort of risk off proxies. Speaking of risk on, like I said just a moment ago, let's watch the toy manufacturers. Ask your kids, what do you want for Christmas? I like this idea of the Sonos. It's a nice product that can be sellable for Christmas. It's not too expensive. It's techy. People like seeing it in their stockings and under the Christmas tree. So it actually makes sense to me that this consumer stock is breaking out to new highs here today. We're long off of original bottoms way back when. It's just a question of when do we sell the last of our options here. And then, I'm a real fan of the energy down in here. Kind of Kevin, him long crude. I've been buying a few of those natural gas and junior related names. They're not performing now. I expect all this stuff to perform into the spring. But gee whiz, here's another one of these big oil names. This is Occidental Petroleum, I think. That's interesting. That's a Sonos. Oh, because this is a different one, eh? But anyway, I won't waste your time here. Just everybody should see this W that's formed here. And what's really interesting about this one is, TRI, I have a secret options formula that I used when I was an options broker to try and sort of filter out what's a risk worth taking. 50% level sitting way up here at $53, just using the highs from back in April. So does this thing have a bit of room to run up here? I think so. So I'm taking a really good look at the April, May, June call options in the sort of $45, $50 area, looking for that move up into 53. And of course, there is that W that you can see on the charts. I'd like to see that turn into a weekly W. So we might be a little bit early there, but like I said, TRI secret options formulas are starting to say, hey, pay attention. So that's sort of stock market-y kind of talk for you, and frankly speaking, it kind of makes sense. Consumers feeling pretty good. Let's keep an eye on what the consumer is buying. Ask your kids what they want for Christmas. What do the adults want? And should we be seeing those stocks move up here? It's only natural. Heading on over to crypto. Obviously through the weekend, did a long show yesterday on the broiler chickens show. So, by all means, and actually I had people say thank you very much for the detailed summary on the corn. So, I don't think it should be, I'm not going to go into too much detail here about levels. Clearly, probably the most important thing of late is we finally had good old Mountain Man, 61.8 fib. We came in, ate that tail that was been sitting there in the market for a long time. And I remember posting charts back in the spring saying this tail looked very concerning to me. As well, we do have things like CME futures charts trying desperately to fill in these gaps. Unfortunately, if this candle finishes this way, this gap's not filled in. So if anything, what I would have preferred to see is the market be down, stay down, big red candle, fill in the gap, and then paint a nice inside bar. With this kind of price action, it tells me that there's probably still more action to go down here. So, and then of course, on the videos that I put out yesterday, for people that are investors, probably best just to stick with your weekly price charts. And there ain't no W's here, so what's the point in us getting too excited on the investment side? I do like the idea, if you are a little old lady, and actually we'll talk about a couple little old lady ideas here that actually paid off for site members very handsomely today. But if you are a little old lady, at least when we are at or below reload zones, you're not walking into the fluff anymore. So that's okay from that perspective. Nanny nibbles, dollar cost averaging, all that kind of talk. But do we have any actual outright buy signals here? And I was going at length in the daily brief about this, and I talked about it yesterday in the broiler chickens. As long as we keep making lower lows on the weekly charts, then there's no buy signals. And if anything, what I really wanted was this candle to finish down and then this candle to be a nice little inside bar. So weekly investors, at best, you have to wait for this week to finish because it's a new weekly bar, then get an inside bar that paints a higher low next week. And then the following week, so that's like 2 Mondays from now, we might get a bit of a buy signal off the weeklies. What I'm seeing here, though, is this is a huge range. From this high up here, 10,540, down to this low, 6,500 and change. Could we get a nice little dead cat bounce, 50% bounce of that range? Sure, no problem. And actually, I spent a lot of time in the daily brief today just going through this. Obviously, this Mountain Man level, there's going to be higher time frame participants who are interested in this level. But at the same time, too, we have a hell of a lot of downside inertia, and people who wanted to sell on the break of that level, they're stepping in and selling right now. So this is like a war zone right here. And what does a war zone look like? A war zone looks like this. Just an absolute mess. Where, we talked about wicks and tails. We talked about trading range failures. I didn't actually mention this in the video yesterday, and I didn't actually see it until later on. I was busy with my son and not too focused in on taking shorts now that we're in this higher time frame long trade location. But I did see 1 high, 2 highs, 3 highs, double top failure. Actually, that was a bot short setup that actually fired. And it's interesting that we talked at length about reload zones and 1.618s. You can see the fight that developed off of that level yesterday, but there just wasn't any follow through on the other side. And fascinating how, we had sort of said in yesterday's video, can I get a fractal here? Can I get a W here? Something here to help me get long. And sure enough, we hit that level, we bounce. So all the trader guys, they're taking profits on a return to the mean on part of their position. But as slower, higher time frame fogies, we'd really like to see the bounce, then a nice little W, and then a turn back up. But what did she do? She bounced, put in an inside bar, and then M'd out. Oh, man. So, basically the bull market collapsed. Whatever bull market there was. broke to new lows, and then, wicks and tails like to be eaten. As soon as we got into this tail, then all hell broke loose. But what I really wanted to show to people, and this really kind of surprised me, but, I suppose with the market, anything can happen. If we actually zoom out and we look at this, you'll notice that really all we're doing is we're just playing with this original trend line from way back when. It's the same trend line, remember? What are you supposed to think if you see the market smiling at you? Uh-oh. And what's fascinating is we've basically been working with this one trend line now for pretty much the past 8 or 9 months. And what I showed in the video here, Daily Brief this morning, which fascinated me, was look at how this same trend line was that tail. Don't get out of there. And then here we are back at that trend line, but in this crazy railroad tracks down here, ching, 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 violent stop out of these weak hands, and then monstrous rally away from that trend line again. So, what does this fight at this mountain man level look like? Well, it's going to often look something like this. So I've sort of suggested to site people that we're going to keep a close eye on the Tuesday, Wednesday London kill zones to see whether they back her up and set up a long trade entry off this trend line tag one more time. Or there's the potential that we just bought our way out here and 33% needs to be hit, but no more than 66, and set up a continuation trade. Those are the scenarios that I'm looking for. There's nothing really for me to do right now. I'm just going to have to let this develop a little more. Fascinating price action. And if anything, such a great testament. Do you really want to be getting too aggressively shorting when we're in these green boxes, mountain mans? Because sometimes the market will just face rip you out of your shorts. I won't go into the levels of the bot, but it turns out that things like move stop to trailing levels were hit on that bot short. So they were doing nothing more than just locking in profits on the short from up top here. But like I said, I didn't take that trade. It was just, if anything, I was a little cursed at myself for actually not paying attention. I was too wrapped up in the range trader conversation. But that's here nor there. So I'll be talking to you guys over the next few weeks, next few trading sessions, beg your pardon, about how does this sort of set up for us. Finish off this brief, and really, it's not really too much to comment on other than, pay attention if you do participate in the altcoin market, because I definitely think that this is, I've said it repeatedly, I believe this is a coin picker's market. Be sharp. It was fascinating yesterday through the broiler chicken show. Somebody asked, Brian, can you take a look at this data? And unfortunately, we're just a little too late to pull the trigger on this. I was exceedingly pleased to hear that TRIers, one gentleman in particular, gave him a big shout out on the show today, said that he was little old ladying his way in here. He stayed focused. He kept his orders working at sell halves on doubles and sell, further halves on further doubles and triples and stuff. And he posted in the lounge. He just literally hit massive payday here. And this is so typical of altcoin land. We haven't seen this kind of market in a while, but it definitely, to me, is a tell that, hey, pay attention. If you play W's in this kind of environment, you might just get paid big time. So congratulations to anybody who took this. Hopefully you can see the structural levels. Like I said, when I was asked about this yesterday, it was too late. But wow, what an end result. And if anything, this is such a great commentary on venture capital and on altcoin space. You've got to make damn sure you have your open orders to sell working, or, at this point, you basically missed the trade. And then, Kevin this morning, he often gives me little tidbits, and he's saying, well, if you like that one, pay attention to this nav. And some guy on Twitter, crypto OGs, all that kind of stuff, said, hey,